A gross content prolongs his fallen state. His small successes are failures of the soul. His little pleasures punctuate frequent griefs. Hardship and toil are the heavy price he pays for the right to live, and his last wages, death. Yes, well, we have to remember that we're still in Book 2, the book of the Traveler of the Worlds, Canto 5, the Godheads of the greater life, of the little life. And Sri Aurobindo is taking us here to speak about man, about humanity. Just a little bit above that from last week, we see still, even in man, the plot is mean and poor. So this consciousness has changed very little, although there has been an evolution from the lower forms, and man is now a transitional form and has to grow much greater and wider in consciousness to make the next leap in the evolution. So Sri Aurobindo is telling us now that we have a gross content, and it refers to a dense or thick, or actually I have found in a dictionary that gross was used to reference material things that the senses can perceive, in contrast to those that are spiritual or ethereal. I think it's a good definition. A gross content prolongs his fallen state. His small successes are failures of the soul. We need to explain that a bit, because we think we succeed in certain things when we may actually be failing in them. In other words, failing in a spiritual way of progress. Even our little pleasures punctuate frequent griefs. And of course, in this world of duality, in this first level of consciousness of body, life, and mind, that's what we feel, that's what we experience, little pleasures, small successes. And then he gives us a colon after the word griefs, because he wants us to know that because of following these things above, that hardship and toil are the heavy price he pays. For what? For the right to live. And then that poignant line, and his last wages, death. My goodness. Any questions anyone have on these lines? Otherwise, we'll move ahead. And inertia, sunk towards inconscience, a sleep that imitates death, is his repose. Well, okay. We have an inertia, tamas, sunk towards inconscience. And Sri Aurobindo tells us in the Life Divine, in a very brief sentence, the inconscience is an inverse reproduction of the supreme superconscious. It has the same absoluteness of being and automatic action, but in a vast, involved trance. It is being lost in itself, plunged in its own abyss of infinity. So that's the inertia that is sunk towards inconscience. And in a brief letter on yoga, he says, one's consciousness separated from the one consciousness, they fell inevitably into ignorance. And the last resort of ignorance was inconscience. Now we have a sleep that imitates death is his repose. In other words, it's our rest. Why does it imitate death? Because we're not conscious of our sleep. We sleep, and Mother has told us exactly how to remember our dreams, how to pull them back as if gently pulling a thread at the very end of our dream and going back. And I have done it in my life, but then we lose the habit is not the right word. We lose the consciousness of doing these things because we get involved with so many other things. And I don't think it's a negative thing exactly, but for most of humanity, a sleep that imitates death is the repose of mankind. Now, he's going to go on very strongly. A puny splendor of creative force is made his spur to fragile human works, which yet outlast their brief creator's breath. So this puny, inferior size or strength or significance, basically weak, this puny splendor, it is a splendor of creative force, great artworks, great sculpture, great music, composition, and still it's a puny splendor of creative force, is made our spur, man's spur, to these fragile human works. But these fragile human works even outlast our breath, which yet outlast their brief creator's breath. And of course, we know what a spur is. So let's continue on. He dreams sometimes of the revels of the gods and sees the Dionysian gesture pass, a leonine greatness that would tear his soul if through his failing limbs and fainting heart the sweet and joyful mighty madness swept. Trivial amusements stimulate and waste the energy given him, the energy given to him to grow and be. Oh, these are very, very important lines. So let's take them a bit slowly. He dreams sometimes of the revels of the gods. Revels, of course, are boisterous festivities, but these are revels of the gods. Still, they could be dances. They could be great moments of pleasure, merrymaking, and sees the Dionysian gesture pass. Now, Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, fruitfulness, and vegetation, by the way, is worshipped in certain orgiastic rites and festivals. But basically, he was also known as the bestower of ecstasy and god of the drama. And he was identified with Bacchus. So we have the Greek and the Roman gods. The gods of ecstasy, drama, and fruitfulness, vegetation, and especially wine. Okay, so man sees the Dionysian gesture passing. And then this very interesting dash is given to us by Sri Aurobindo, because he wants us to feel that a leonine greatness that would tear his soul if through his failing limbs and fainting heart the sweet and joyful mighty madness swept. We hesitate a little bit there because there's a colon. And what he wants us to understand is that these great things is something characteristic of the power of a lion, a greatness that would tear his soul. If it entered through our failing limbs and fainting heart, this sweet and joyful mighty madness, if it swept into us. And that's why Mother said, I can never reveal myself fully to humanity. We would see Mother, of course, some would see her as an elderly lady. Others would see her as a mighty, mighty presence. And a few would see a little bit behind the veil, the divine Shakti. When I saw her, I cannot tell you what went through my soul. Such power, such vastness, and yet such love. So, if through his failing limbs and fainting heart, look at that, failing limbs, fainting heart, the sweet and joyful mighty madness swept, trivial amusements stimulate and waste the energy given to him to grow and be. Trivial amusements that stimulate us, but they also waste the energy that is given to us to grow and be. And in almost 85 years, I can tell you that I have experienced those trivial amusements too often. All right. His little hour is spent in little things. Wow. His little hour, that means his brief time on this stage of earth, is spent in little things. Anger, sorrow, grief, ego. We could go on and on and on about the little things in our little hours. And now we have the next line, which is very important. A brief companionship with many jars, a little love and jealousy and hate, a touch of friendship mid indifferent crowds, draw his heart plan on life's diminutive map. A brief companionship with many jars. Here I feel that these term jars is unpleasant effects upon the mind or feelings, actually shocks. Could be quarrels, could be disagreements, especially minor ones, but could be also this unpleasant shock that we feel Sometimes we say it's in our heart. Sometimes we say it's in our mind. Sometimes we feel it in our body. Remember, Vivekananda said, be careful of words. They're more dangerous than blows. So, a brief companionship with many jars, a little love and jealousy and hate, a touch of friendship mid indifferent crowds, draw his heart plan on life's diminutive map, extremely tiny, extremely small. We'll carry on. If something great awakes, too frail his pitch to reveal its zenith tension of delight, his thought to eternize its ephemeral soar. Art's brilliant gleam is a pastime for his eyes. Well, a lot to look at here. He's told us of all these things that are trivial in our lives, our failing limbs, our fainting heart. If anything great and powerful came in, it would reduce us to nothing. It would shatter us, actually. And even our works of art and other things, they outlast us. So we see now that if something great awakes, too frail his pitch, that means his degree of intensity, to reveal its zenith tension of delight. I don't know if zenith is American or if zenith is preferred British. I haven't looked it up. But it's the high point, to reveal its zenith tension of delight. His thought to eternize, that's a very interesting use of the word eternize, to make eternal, to perpetuate, even to immortalize its ephemeral soar, ephemeral, short-lived, transitory. Art's brilliant gleam is a pastime for his eyes. Vladimir, add something here. This is so extraordinary, this passage.
Well, what is striking me in this passage is that we cannot handle this sleep as a preparation for death, this attraction for our being to disappear, to rest, to forget itself. We are constantly drawn to some kind of switching off from being conscious. If we are conscious for a while, it is so intense, so bright, that brightness we cannot handle. We need darkness a bit. We need forgetfulness of who we are to come back again. And this is that smallness of our being, that incapacity to hold consciousness, which is actually balanced in its progress and growth by constant, falling asleep and waking up, falling asleep and waking up. And he gives here the reason why it is so. Yes, we cannot handle the fullness of consciousness. That's the whole thing. So we have to constantly grow into it slowly, step by step, and that takes time. So
that's the most important. Yes, that's most important. Carry on, please.
Yeah, we may blame ourselves that we didn't do the right thing or didn't do the fullness of we could do, and it is so. And we have to do that because we have to see that how much time we wasted in our life for those small things. But truly speaking, our capacity is limited. Of this being which is to be transformed by this higher consciousness. This being we inherited from the past is actually our foundation with which we work, and it is rooted in the inconscient. And so it's a very balanced vision, very beautiful vision, which explains why things as they are.
Yes, yes. Well, this is why Sri Aurobindo tells us that this yoga is a battlefield. And he says you must be patient and realize it will take a lot of time. It may take many births, but that's fine for me. If I can reach the supermind in 1,000 births, so what? He promised that to us. He's promised that each of us who have taken to the integral yoga will realize the supermind at one day. So I'll read a little bit more, and then Ashwini will read the full thing. A thrill that smites the nerves is music's spell. Well, to smite is a very powerful statement. And I don't think Sri Aurobindo is speaking here of classical and beautiful music. I think it's more in the rock arena. A thrill that smites the nerves. I've never had my nerves smitten by listening to a great orchestral piece. Rather, I've been uplifted. I've seen two performances, one in New York, one in San Francisco with Michael Tilson Thomas of the Second Symphony of Mahler. And I saw the same thing with Christoph Eschenbach in Atlanta. And you almost go out of your body when that last movement begins, or even the second movement. So a thrill that smites the nerves is music's spell. Full stop. Amidst his harassed toil and welter of cares, pressed by the labor of his crowding thoughts, he draws sometimes around his aching brow nature's calm, mighty hands to heal his life pain. Well, here I can speak from experience, of course. For me, the earth, nature, flowers, the beauty and the power of trees, the landscapes of the Japanese, I'll never forget the beauty of the Arctic in Alaska, flying over the ice floes and the blue as I've never seen a blue. There's so much in this earth. The smallest flower can give us the greatest pleasure. Amidst his harassed toil, persistently disturbed, tormented with sort of like with troubles or cares, constantly bothered. Amidst his harassed toil and welter of cares, pressed by the labor of his crowding thoughts. Here again, the crowding thoughts that enter us without our permission. We simply allow them to come in. And so we allow them to throng or press on us. And they're not our thoughts at all. They're thoughts from universal nature, from the creative hand of Prakriti. And they enter whomever is open to them, good or bad, genius or clod. Pressed by the labor of his crowding thoughts, he draws sometimes around his aching brow nature's calm, mighty hands to heal his life pain. Oh, how extraordinary. Now, I'll read just two more lines. He is saved by her silence from his rack of self. In her tranquil beauty is his purest bliss. Now, this rack here, I would define it as torment or anguish, this rack of self. So he is saved by nature's mighty hands that heal his life pain. And notice that Sri Aurobindo says he draws sometimes around his aching brow nature's calm, mighty hands to heal his life pain. He is saved by her silence from his rack of self. In her tranquil beauty is his purest bliss. This need for the silence of the soul is so important now. This peace and calm that nothing can disturb. All right. But funny.
Can I read?
Please.
A gross content prolongs his fallen state. His small successes are failures of the soul. His little pleasures punctuate frequent griefs. Hardship and toil are the heavy price he pays for the right to live, and his last wages death. An inertia sunk towards inconscience, a sleep that imitates death is his repose. A puny splendor of creative force is made his spur to fragile human words, which yet outlast their brief creator's breath. He dreams sometimes of the revels of the gods, and sees the Dionysian gesture pass, a leonine greatness that would tear his soul if through his failing limbs and fainting heart the sweet and joyful mighty madness swept. Trivial amusements stimulate and waste the energy given to him to grow and be. His little hour is spent in little things. A brief companionship with many jars, a little love and jealousy and hate, a touch of friendship mid indifferent crowds, draw his heart plan on life's diminutive map. If something great awakes, too frail his pitch to reveal its zenith tension of delight, his thought to eternize its ephemeral soar, art's brilliant gleam is a pastime for his eyes. A thrill that smites the nerves is music's spell. Amidst his harassed toil and welter of cares, pressed by the labor of his crowding thoughts, he draws sometimes around his aching brow nature's calm, mighty hands to heal his life pain. He is saved by her silence from his rack of self. In her tranquil beauty is his purest bliss.
Oh, thank you so much, Savitri. Thank you. So we will meet again